Hello everyone, I'm Matt, and today's small plastic robot is fortunately not brought to you by Harmony Gold. For today's build, we're taking a much needed break from Gundams to explore a more recent variety of Bandai high grade, based upon the iconic Macross franchise. Good timing on my behalf, given it was just announced for Disney+. Well, most of it was. There's been a handful of these kits thus far, taken from Macross Plus and Macross Frontier, and I previously built the YF-29 from the former last year. Whilst the finished kit is pretty alright, I did find the build a little rough, thanks to a mix of severe sticker usage and my inability to fix the shoulder detail when I snapped it. I was also baffled by the advertised shortcut change gimmick. It's essentially marketing speak for parts forming, and although said parts forming is beneficial to each mode, and less severe than some high-grade Gunpla, it still involves replacing some pretty big chunks of the kit. But I'm all for second chances, so today we're building the YF-29 Durandal Valkyrie as seen in 2011's Macross Frontier film, The Wings of Farewell. Now, let me be clear, I'm coming into this kit with not much knowledge about Frontier, besides the fact that, number 1, it's a Macross series, number 2, it's the one that had Cheryl Nome in it. It's very much a case of me going, wow, cool robot, and picking it up. But to be fair, that's how I am with most kits that I build. In this case, much of the appeal was the involvement of mecha designer and series creator Shoji Kawamori, who is basically the mech equivalent of Jesus Christ to me. The fact that one guy had a hand in making Optimus Prime, the Gundam GP01 Full Burning, the Nervash from Eureka 7, the Macross franchise, and even the new Thunderbird is the sort of thing I find mind-blowing. I should also note there's two versions of this kit. This is the Alto Saotome version, but there's also a nice blue version with a few extra pieces, based on the Valkyrie's appearance in the 2021 Macross Delta film, Zetai Live. Also worth noting, I built this kit whilst on my holidays, in the lovely locales of York, so I was working with a much reduced tool set. This meant I had to improvise a few times, mainly in terms of Gundam markering, but I did do a couple of touch-ups when I got back to the Gunpla shed. The kit is also a fair bit pricier than the average high grade, around the £40 to £50 mark in the UK, but you do get a fair bit of plastic in the box. 12 runners overall, as well as a small but handy runnerless stand. Of course, there's also that enormous sheet of stickers, which utilise PET microfilm for a thinner than usual foil sticker that is still opaque. From what I can gather, having a jillion decals is rather par for the course on Macross kits, but they usually take the form of water slide decals, and sure enough, the sold separately water slides for this set are heavily advertised, both on the box and in the manual. These, paired with micro set and a top coat, will probably be a much stronger and visually superior option to the stickers. But I was on my holiday, so the stickers were what I went with. As always, the head was first up, and I was happy to see that the instructions tell you which runners are required for each section, as I feel this usually simplifies runner management. There's some pretty large gate marks on the pieces, but they snip off pretty easily, although I'd take a light touch on the antenna. There's already a couple of stickers to apply, but they're pretty minimal, with two black and red stripes either side of the head. The face of the kit is rendered in two colours of clear plastic, using polarised moulding for a colour changing effect when hit by light. Unfortunately, I don't think it's pulled off very well. It reminds me of the sort of plastic you'd see on a Poundland toy, looking a bit cheap and washed out. My solution was the metallic blue and green Gundam markers, which I applied to both segments of the face. I much prefer the results, and I think it makes the detail on the blue piece a little easier to perceive as well. I also did the cheeks of the head in chrome silver. According to the painted booklet model, they're meant to be white, but I didn't have my white marker on me, so I improvised. The torso build is pretty different to the average Gunpla, with pieces being removed or replaced to facilitate the transformations. This means there's a lot of joints and a lot of tabs and pegs, including some polycap-esque pieces inside the midsection, and where the arms connect to the body. Everything snaps together without issue though, and the tolerances feel pretty spot on. Even with the sizable amount of part separation, there's plenty of stickers to apply though, and although most of them went on without issue, some precision is required to prevent any peeling or scraping when the kit is manipulated. Not to mention ensuring the printed details match up with the moulded ones, for example, panel lines. As for the clear purple pieces in the chest, I popped some chrome marker on the back of them, ensuring they would catch the light better whilst further highlighting the internal moulded detail. The arms of the kit are symmetrical, save for the shoulders and hands, and the build is rather similar to a high-grade Iron-Blooded Orphans kit, with a full inner frame inside. In this kit, it's purely for stability and layering, so there's no internal detail. It was around this point gate marks became a bit of an issue. First off, there's a couple of nubs located on pegs, so look twice before taking your cutters to them. The other issue I found was larger gates being somewhat tough to deal with, leaving nasty gouges or marking on the pieces. This was more troublesome on the white pieces than the red ones, which I found easier to clean up. But as usual, I sorted any problems rather painlessly with some light sanding. On the surface, the kit appears to have a double jointed elbow, but it's merely moulded in detail. The upper arm is one large piece that pegs into the shoulder area, so it's just the one bend. Whilst not quite as flexible as most modern Gunpla, the armour is designed to provide a pretty solid bend regardless. The stickers here are mostly limited to markings on the shoulders, which I feel could have been fitted to the area better, as well as a rather large one that covers the front of the lower arm. Given the very minimal detail on said sticker, I'm slightly confused why this couldn't have just been moulded in detail, rather than utilising stickers, but the red does at least match to the plastic well. Finally, I popped a little bit of silver onto the arm vents. In this case, I used shined silver rather than chrome, for a more restrained approach. Inside the shoulders and legs, there's a battery of missiles moulded in black, and whilst a few of the product shots suggested to leave them be, a couple of shots appeared to use a dark red colour scheme on them. Usually, I'd have done this with my seed red Gundam marker, but in keeping with the amount of metallic marker I've been throwing at this build already, I stuck some metallic red in there instead. It was very hard to apply this cleanly, and I did have to take my Gundam eraser to the piece once or twice, but the final results, while subtle, catch the light brilliantly. Whilst I'm on the subject of the shoulders, I will quickly note that they use a ball joint connection. Again, quite uncommon for modern Gunpla, but they combine with the torso joints to provide a pretty good range of motion here. The waist segment is very simple, containing both a display port for the included stand, as well as two polycap style ball joints for the legs to plug into. You get two stickers here, one that covers the entire front area, and another that covers the small raised area within. I painted the raised area with my red Gundam marker, and whilst it looked quite nice at the time, I did find later on that it scratched off very easily due to the transformation, so top coating it might be a good shout. The sticker is also an option of course, but I'm unsure whether that would hold up well either, given the trouble I had later on with stickers on raised areas. The legs contain the majority of the actual transforming pieces in the set, and that starts with the feet, which include a sliding mechanism in the ankles. They also include a quartet of stickers that are very thin and very happy to peel off, which isn't great. A feature shared with the earlier YF-29 kit is the upper leg vents changing between modes via parts removal. I kept the Battroid vents as is, but I did chrome up the recessed fans for the jet mode. There's not quite as much inner frame as in the arms, owing to the space required for the transforming mechanisms, but there's still plenty of parts to be snapped together, and even without the stickers, there's plenty of plastic colour separation in here. The stickers here range from alright to infuriating, with those on the side skirts and upper legs being especially poor at staying put. As mentioned with the shoulders, I'm not a big fan of the way the unit markings were done either. A small sheet of real grade style decals with translucent backing would have been better, but I suppose that's what the water slide decals are advertised for. Earlier, I discussed how the kit made runner management simpler by highlighting which runners are required for each section. Well, that goes out the window when you reach the backpack, with parts required from almost every runner. It does at least mean there's a lot of colour separation, but even so there's plenty of stickers to be had here. There's a little more dodgy nub placement to contend with and all, especially on the small wing fins. The assembly itself is less fraught however, and the wings feel rather well engineered. They retract inward for Battroid mode, and the movement is supplied by two small connectors that feel secure and robust when the full wing is assembled. I did find assembling a couple of pieces, like the white intakes in the wing boosters, involved a bit of a balancing act, whilst the missiles in the back cannons secure in place with very small tabs, something I fear could be a breakage risk down the line. The stickers in this area are probably the most taxing to apply too. There's lots of bending and precision required on the wings and fins, and it's rather nerve-wracking getting it all lined up without damaging the stickers. Even with due care and attention, a few stickers took after the side skirts and kept lifting up anyway. Fun times. With all the pieces assembled for the Battroid mode, it was a quicker experience putting the pieces for the Gwalk and jet transformations together. That said, the main nose cone segment has a good amount of parts to it, including some more clear green pieces. As with the visor earlier, I coloured these in with metallic marker. You're also provided with a tiny pilot figure of Alto Saotome himself for the cockpit. Being on holiday, I wasn't able to paint him up, as I did with the tiny Dyson included in the YF-29, but if I find the time in future, I'd love to go back and give it a go. The lower segment of the jet mode is a single piece of plastic with a couple of stickers required, one of which got a little scuffed up as a consequence of me removing and reapplying it a couple of times. There's also a pair of stickers for the frame of the cockpit window. They look alright in situ, but they do take the same careful handiwork to apply properly. Finally, I jumped onto the very light weapons loadout. The gun is very simple in design, but it does include a shifting mechanism for the sight. Sadly, this doesn't extend to the extended form of the weapon, which requires the barrel halves to be removed and reattached to complete. I popped some more chrome marker inside the barrels to pick out the nice internal detail, and I did the same on the blade of the small knife too. Likewise, the shield is quite simple, but it does include storage for the knife when not in use. Getting the large sticker to line up with the holes on the front was a little tough, but lining up stickers was something I was very used to by now, so I at least had the patience for it. Obviously, detailing the kit up was something I'd been doing throughout, given how stickering up the set was a major part of the build. Even so, there's plenty of panel lines to be had, and so I used a mix of my fine tip markers, mainly the grey one, as well as the flow type markers. They went on areas I found more prone to fading. Once I'd arrived home from York, back to the comfort of the Gunpla shed, I did a couple of extra finishing touches too. Mainly finishing the panel lining, cementing the somewhat loose head antenna into place, and replacing the rather troublesome stickers on the thighs with black and yellow Gundam marker. This took a few tries, but it looks much better than the stickers did. I also popped a minuscule amount of super glue onto the side skirt stickers, in order to put an end to the peeling nightmares they gave me. And here's the completed YF-29 Durandal Valkyrie, ready to spread the gospel of transforming robots and idols throughout the galaxy. Popped on the included stand and up on display, the kit does look very nice, even if the rather heavy sticker usage does become apparent on further inspection. The colours are fine, match pretty well to the plastic in the set, but the attempt to replicate moulded detail and panel lines does fall a little flat, with the results feeling a bit one-dimensional and disjointed. Although a good chunk of the stickers do stay stuck with no issue, there's more than a few cases where they're happy to peel off, as I found out during the build of the legs and backpack. And whilst I covered up a bit of the polarised clear plastic, I didn't have the right colours to do that on the cockpit, so that still looks a bit iffy to me. Aesthetically, it reminds me a lot of a Shoji Kawamori design I mentioned at the start, the Nervash Type 0 from Eureka 7, also known as the best anime ever made and no you can't tell me otherwise. The similarities extend from the proportions, particularly the rather lanky arms, all the way to specific details like the lights in the chest and the colour scheme. There's still plenty of Macross DNA in here though. It's a bit more apparent when you place it next to the YF-19 from Macross Plus, with the upper leg vents and shoulders from that design carrying over to this one. I do personally find the newer variable fighter a tad over-designed, with the YF-19 possessing a simpler look that's a bit more my cup of tea. As for the stability and articulation of the kit, I was ready to call it underwhelming. I found the shoulder mobility and upwards kicks were quite nice, but the limbs being single jointed, as well as the heavy ball joint usage, do have more in common with Gunpla from 10 to 20 years ago, and I found the waist, lower legs and ankles all rather restrictive. After spending more time with the kit though, and taking a closer look at how the joints throughout interact, I reckon it's much better than I'd previously thought. The torso, as well as a mild ab crunch, also provides a swivel, and the hips swinging up provide a pretty wide stance for the Battroid, although clashing parts can sometimes get in the way. I will also caution that some of the joints are prone to coming loose when manipulated. I found this was mainly the case with the torso connection and side skirts, but otherwise the kit shouldn't give you too much trouble in this form. The lower legs can technically swivel too, but there's very little range to them, and that extends to the feet and their limited pivot. Even with those restrictions, the Battroid can still strike lots of poses, and it manages to look dynamic even just standing there, something I think is assisted by the rather lean and athletic silhouette. There's also a selection of unique hand parts for recreating specific moments from the series included, which does add some character to the mecha. The weapons are a bit on the simple side, but the rifle goes great with the overall aesthetic, although I don't think the expanded form comes off great, with the very visible sliding joint and tab on the upper section. The knife on the other hand feels a bit too small and unspectacular for a giant robot, at least compared to some I've seen on Gundams. To my eyes it looks less like a combat blade and more like a butter knife, which is handy for around the toast but not for intergalactic warfare. And while we're on the subject of accessories, and also apparently on a sliding scale from good to grim, is the display stand. It doesn't do so well at keeping him upright, which isn't great given most of this thing's advertised poses require the thing. Anyway, it's time to get this thing transformed into its first alternate form, the iconic Gwalk mode that asks, what if a transformer got stuck mid-transformation and decided to roll with it? Said transformation is not especially pleasant feeling, although the final results do look how they should. The legs feel rather wobbly when converted into the chicken leg shape, not really locking into place, but the kneecaps do keep the thighs in place, so it'll stand up fine, even if running of flying positions are a bit difficult to achieve. Plus, the hip joint comes into play as well, giving the Valkyrie a little more of a natural stance, though it's a bit easy to pull the leg out of said joint. Up top, the stability woes aren't quite as severe. It can be a little hard to get the chest and transformed headpiece to stay in place, but the arms connect in securely and maintain the same articulation they had in Battroid mode, though it's worth keeping in mind the actual posability is somewhat limited by the legs and wings getting in the way. With everything said and done though, even as someone who isn't a big fan of Gwalk forms usually, I think it's been done really well here, definitely visually. And with a little bit more work, here's the Valkyrie's jet mode. Probably the highlight of the kit for me, even considering the fact it doesn't do a whole lot. Compared to the Gwalk mode transformation, this feels much smoother and more secure. The tabs that connect the chest to the underside are a little small, but I find they hold in more often than not, and the chest and headpiece feel much less prone to popping out than they do in Gwalk mode. There's also some nicely detailed landing gear for some extra choice in displaying. I think that part of the appeal of this and the Gwalk mode is how much of the sticker work is visible. Whether you see that as a good thing or a bad thing probably depends on your experience with the stickers, but my own view is that it highlights the detail work that goes into the kit, whilst possessing many of the Battroid's features, more so in the Gwalk mode. I also found both transformations were a little more stable on the stand compared to the Battroid. Overall, the high-grade YF-29 is a sometimes strange kit. For one, it feels like a very different experience to most high-grade Gunpla, and for a kit retailing in the UK around £40 to £50, there are a lot of stickers, some of which are no issue, and some of which will have you frothing with rage. The final kit can feel a little strange in hand too, and even a little limited in what it does at first, owing to the unique design and construction. Once you get the hang of its intricate joints and transformation, however, the kit does shine, with loads of character on offer, even if I feel the accessories don't always do a great job of supporting it, quite literally in the case of the stand. I think the main value in the kit overall comes from the visual appearance, ability to replicate poses from the series, and the changing between modes. The latter can be a little finicky, and the other modes don't do much either, but the transformations do end up feeling quicker than the other parts formations I've done, as advertised. and the gear walking and jet modes look great too. As such, if you're after a kit in the vein of most high-grade Gunpla, this may not be the set for you, because although parts of the build are similar, the construction and finish results can feel a bit intimidating at points, thanks to unique articulation and amount of stickers. However, keep in mind I'm approaching this from the perspective of someone who's touched 2 Macross kits in his entire life, so it's likely I'm coming at this from the wrong angle. To me, it feels like Bandai were maybe trying to combine the concept of high-grade Gunpla with the ability to reproduce a realistic aircraft mode, akin to a non-transforming kit like Hasegawa's Macross sets, which would also explain the heavily advertised waterslide decals. The shortcut change parts forming obviously does a lot of the legwork here, but as a result, all 3 transformations do wind up pretty distinct from each other. Well, maybe not the Gwalk and Jet, but the Battroid and Jet certainly. I'd argue that, while certainly not perfect, as a mid-sized display piece for Macross fans, with multiple display options, it's more than worth the price of admission. Just do yourself a favour and invest in those water slides. And some Microsoft while you're at it. Finally, I feel the first Macross high grade, the YF-29, is still a worthwhile recommendation. It has a simpler and cleaner design, and whilst there's similar positives and drawbacks on both kits, the YF-19 does feel a bit more akin to a regular high grade build, so it'd probably be a better place to start with the line. But I think that'll do it for today. I'm off to stare longingly at the just announced real grade RX-78-2 2.0, and also those rather out there Requiem for Vengeance high grades. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Durandal Valkyrie though, and thanks for watching. Until next time, take care everyone.